Yes, thank you. Good morning. I have some questions regarding the Pierce investigation into bullying. Thank you. So my questions relate to the independent investigation into allegations of workplace bullying conducted by Professor Dennis Pierce. And I'm interested to know, to date, what is the total amount that has been spent, and I'm not sure whether it would be from the CSIRO budget or the federal government, additional, in having that investigation take place.
So, Senator, if I may just confirm, in terms of the budget, it is from CSIRO's budget.
Thank you. And what is the total amount to date that has been expended on that investigation?
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice. We don't have the information with us.
All right, thank you for that. I want to know then, are there any further costs associated with that investigation that will be incurred ongoing from now?
So, Senator, can I just clarify? Any additional costs is part of that investigation, but then you said ongoing. Could you clarify?
Well, my understanding is that the report was handed down in August 2013, but I'm not sure whether or not that was the end of the expenditure. So I'm asking for essentially what's been paid to today's date, but are there likely to be ongoing costs incurred as a result of that investigation?
So yes, there are 2 phases of work, and thank you for clarifying, and I can get that information to you on notice.
Thank you. The inquiry found that there were no major problems of workplace bullying and that it's not possible to describe the work culture as toxic. And that was reported in August 2013. Can you tell me at what date did CSIRO know that the investigation would not be making any findings of bullying?
Senator, we received the general findings report on August the 1st, both myself and the chair of CSIRO, and on August the 15th, I think you mentioned August the 16th, but on August the 15th it was made public and was on the HWL Ebsworth website as well.
Thank you. So the first that you were aware, I'll just allow you. That's right. So the first that you were aware that there wouldn't be any findings of bullying was when you first received that report yourselves on the 1st of August 2013?
Well, Senator, you go to one of the broad conclusions, but the report was also very clear that CSIRO needed to make a fundamental shift in the way that it dealt with the issue of inappropriate workplace behaviour, and that fundamental shift that was pointed out in the report was to move the issue from being an individual's problem to being an organisational issue in the same way that we deal with safety. The report also made some 34 recommendations, which CSIRO accepted all 34 recommendations, and our teams have been undertaking the implementation of the changes required in our organisation to meet those recommendations. And of course, we have been providing that information to Professor Pierce and his team.
And his team since the report was handed down?
There are 2 reports. So the first report that you referred to, which is the general findings report, there's a second report, which is the phase 2, and that is still outstanding. So phase 2 covers further investigation into some of the cases and submissions that were made as part of phase 1, and also any further general findings from Professor Pierce and his investigation.
So what's the timeline for phase 2 then?
In terms of phase 2, the general findings report we're expecting to be received in April, and we will make that public as well. We're expecting to make that public very shortly after in May. Those dates, of course, and the timetable is really under the control of Professor Pearce. So what I'm outlining is our expectation of that timetable.
So when you say it's under the control of Professor Pearce, I presume that it's a contract arrangement, so you'd have some control or some expectations or indication about that. It wouldn't just be open-ended, would it?
No, but Professor Pearce is undertaking and has undertaken an arm's length independent investigation, and so I'm just clear about that arm's length and independence really of Professor Pearce. He has been clear to us of the timetable, and that's the timetable that I'm reflecting.
Thank you. So if I can just try and get a better understanding then. So the original, the phase 1 and the report that was published in August last year was the general consideration of the issues that had been raised at that point. And I do understand one of the recommendations was, I think, to move away from perhaps the use of grievance procedures and individual procedures to more systemic procedures in terms of making it an organisational responsibility. So I hear understand that's what you said. And then this phase 2 is about particularly investigating particular cases and allegations that were raised. Is that what phase 2 is about?
That's right. As you outlined, phase 1 was about receiving the submissions, investigating and looking at those submissions, defining whether some of those submissions needed to go to phase 2 investigation. We are currently in phase 2 of the investigation.
So what do you envisage maybe some of the outcomes of phase 2? May it be finding that certain people are responsible for behaviour or actions that have taken place? Is there a potential misconduct element to some of those cases and the investigation? There
may be. So each of those cases, Professor Pearce provides the findings of his investigation. And then provides a recommendation to CSIRO, which can be, can be no further investigation. Sometimes the submissions, in fact, the general tone of the submissions was always to make CSIRO the best it could be. Some of the recommendations are no further. They have been picked up in the general findings report. Some of them will be for CSIRO to undertake further investigation. Some of them will be for different actions that we might need to undertake in our procedures, in our processes, etc. And some of the recommendations may relate to CSIRO undertaking misconduct investigations in some cases.
And is it envisaged, or is it possible that indeed, having done the investigation of some of these cases, that there may even be recommendations about disciplinary action as such? Or do you understand that it would then go to the responsibility of CSIRO to then investigate further?
It really... So just outlined, the recommendation from Professor Pearce will then be, if it should go through to the recommendation of misconduct, then it will be for CSIRO to undertake a misconduct, recommend to CSIRO to undertake a misconduct investigation. And that's been very clearly outlined in terms of the terms of reference, the procedure, etc. That's been very transparent and public in terms of how that process moves forward.
Thank you for that. And apart from the facts that Professor Pearce has been considering and weighing up in terms of his investigation, have there been any other constraints on his ability to make findings of bullying? Was it open to him to make those findings within the terms of reference? Are there any other constraints that would actually...
There have been no constraints on Professor Pearce. It was very important that this was an independent, arm's length investigation, and Professor Pearce, I think, has served not just CSIRO well, but has served the nation well in the thoroughness and rigour of his investigation, and I think the wisdom of his findings. We think reflect that wisdom in that we've accepted all 34 of the recommendations, and we also accept the fundamental shift that the organisation needed to undertake. You asked me earlier on what are the expected outcomes, and we've talked about some of the more detailed outcomes, but there are actually broader outcomes. And the broader outcomes for us as an organisation has been a real commitment to our staff health, It's been really putting the issues of stress and staff health on top of the table. It's been training our managers to be able to address those issues. It's been putting in place reporting, investigation procedures that are thorough, and as you outlined, even in the way that we address these in terms of workplace misconduct, and certainly I've asked my staff not to work past it. So there are, in terms of CSIRO being the best it can be, I can assure you that there are much broader outcomes from this report, and we have been and are fully committed to both the safety and health of our staff.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ms Clark.